The banking sector has worked hard to win favour with the South African consumer. And taking a look at how this is translated into social media sentiment, our regular slot with JP Kloppers, who is CEO of Brands Eye. Evening to you, JP. Good to have you back in Johannesburg.
Yeah, good to be here.
I like talking to you when you're in Cape Town. It's too far away.
Yes.
So what have we got now? We're talking, I know we're going to talk a bit about the fees must fall stuff, the student fees, but let's talk about the banks.
Yeah, I think what we've looked at in the banking sector is just how does what we measure, which is the sentiment on social media, how does that translate into actual market share at the end of the day for the banking sector? So we kind of just stepped through it to look at from a macro view. You know, if we look at, I think it's up.
Yeah.
If we look at the first chart, which is positive or negative sentiment towards the brands, when you're just looking at that, it actually fluctuates quite a lot. This is the end of the story that we're looking at now, and Capitec gained a lot of customers. But if we go back a bit, so if we look at this, quite a messy chart. But what we see here is complaints against banks over the past year, all right? And it's actually hard to see. And Capitec is sometimes up, sometimes they're down. What was surprising to us in this...
Which is Capitec, the light blue one.
Yes, and then the red one quite near the top is FNB. And that was surprising to us, because if we look back a year, FNB was kind of the golden child of social media. You know, they did really well, always on point, responding to everything. RB Jacobs is famous.
Yeah.
But then we'd see this positive and negative sentiment quite high for both of them. And we were seeing the same for Capitec. So we actually had to think, hang on, what does this mean? And so when we actually looked into it, and one of the interesting charts that we're going to look at is the one on customer service.
Right.
So the one that's up now is the most loved, and we saw Capitec well ahead of everyone else. But this is the one where where the rubber meets the road. So in all of that kind of noise, we distill down to just customer service. So we kind of exclude the campaigns, and we just look at customer service. This is it here. And you see this kind of difference between positive, your advocates and your detractors. And two kind of trends emerge. The one is the kind of customer where they're asleep, and the other one is where expectations are high and either met or unmet. And I think that's been, for us, one of the really big learnings over the past year, is realizing, hang on, social media is giving an insight into really the relationship between a brand and its customers. And where they set expectations that they can't meet, you then see market share reflect that. So here we see kind of Capitec setting a high expectation, but that high sentiment that you see offsetting the negative sentiment kind of shows you that, yes, their customers are unhappy, but they're solving those issues. And if you look at that on the market share, what it translates to is Capitec winning 100,000 customers a month. Yep. Which is a staggering number when you think about it in the South African context. 100,000 customers a month. And so that sort of negative sentiment, I think, and we talk about it every week, you know, what does it mean? And this is one of the real kind of golden examples of seeing how that translates into market share, because it gives this window into the customer experience and where there's this expectation experience mismatch.
But then how does the social media tell you about market share? Or are you looking at separate stats for market share?
Well, these are the separate stats. Those stats is just the numbers which the banks publish every year. And that obviously comes out, you know, a couple months later.
The social media.
And we see that trend beforehand, which to me is fascinating. Like with Brexit, you can see how people felt influenced what they did later, and why should it be any different with a brand? So I think this thing of measuring kind of what is driving consumers in South Africa, and you were speaking about banks earlier, they're all the kind of macro factors affecting share price.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, there's a customer who's having an experience, and if he's being overpromised and under-delivered, that's a problem, which obviously the brand needs to address. And so I love what we're doing and how social media is almost being elevated to say, hang on, this is giving you a real-time view into what's happening in your customer base.
And as you go, I think you get more and more accurate reflections. Let's move to our trend of the week. And as I said earlier, we can't leave talking about the fees must fall. And in fact, when the fees must fall campaign first started, I mean, you were involved in that too, and it told us a lot about what people were saying. So what are we learning now?
I think it's a lot smaller this year than it was last year. If you just look at those numbers, 1.6 million over a longer time period that we measured last year.
That number is what? Mentions?
Number of conversations happening, number of mentions. And then this year it's at 96,000. So this is a much shorter sample. So I think we've got to see like what legs does this have over the next couple of weeks. Will it kind of die out? Is it going to increase? Because last year we kind of saw it pick up, and that's quite rare for a trend.
It was also very sudden. I mean, it started at Wits, and everyone said, what's happening here? And suddenly it was everywhere. Whereas now we know about it, and it's kind of more steady.
And I think a lot of the conversation that we saw last year was people looking at it saying, what is this fees must fall? Let's investigate. Whereas now the South African public knows what it is. They know what it's about. And whether it's generating that same amount of resonance with the kind of community broader than just the students. And like the previous speaker said, you know, the macroeconomic factor is far less concerned about, and it's a pity, how students feel as opposed to what happens to Praveen Gordhan, you know?
Yes.
Yet in that microcosm of the students, it's still a very big issue, is what we're seeing on social media.
And the future of higher education.
Absolutely.
Very big issue. That is JP Klopp. As always, good to have him in the studio from Brands Eye. He is the CEO there. And that's it from the Closing Bell South Africa team for today.